Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me is Professor Pixel. We're covering Season 2, Episode 15 of Twin Peaks, that wonderful ABC TV show here on our channel where we cover everything from 80s movies, action, sci-fi, horror, you name it, we cover it. And it's all here, including some TV, specifically Extreme TV, because that's where we're at. For those of you that are new listening, we've had a lot of new listeners lately. We've been going episode by episode in a show that our millennial friend here of the program, Professor Pixel, has never seen, Twin Peaks. We're getting towards the end, Pixel, of Season 2. We've been directionless. We've been lost, adrift at sea, as it were, rudderless. We've just gone through a storm. We had a somewhat strong, likable episode before in episode 14, but now going into 15. I feel like it's a Twin Peaks episode. I feel like it's a very bad episode. So I'm trying to find the good in it, but I feel let down after the strength of the last episode. And we talked about before how it wasn't until the last few episodes after the reveal of the Laura Palmer killer that we were going to get David Lynch and Mark Frost to kind of say, okay, let's get this thing back to shore and solidify it. And I thought we were on that path, but after this episode, I'm not so sure. Let me ask you to go ahead and start things off, as it were.
I mean, all right. I'm just going to go ahead and give my quick initial thoughts and say that I did enjoy things about this episode. This one, there's some stuff I'm not sure on, and it's really, but one thing that I really do appreciate in this episode, and as we go over the events, we'll see why, is part of the start. We start out in this darkness, and we're panning across chess pieces, and chess has become ultimately important because that's Wyndham Earle's tool to life. But it doesn't last long until we see a pair of woman's legs, and we go up and we see, who is it? Oh, it's the widow, Mrs. Marsh.
And trashy black stockings, by the way.
Oh, well.
There's always a girl in high school that wore black stockings and wore like a skirt. And it was just, that's something, we always remember is whatever. Maybe not in today's world, but yeah, she's in mourning, of course.
Yes, mourning, but not really over her husband, because her quote unquote brother, I believe his name is Malcolm, is there talking to the sheriff's department at the house to set James up. And she makes small comments here and there, but it doesn't last long. And as soon as they're gone, Malcolm comes over and says that he's not appreciating her attitude right now. They're getting away with everything they wanted to. But it's not long after that, she just walks away, and we go to Wally's. I don't know if you noticed this, but there's opera in the background. And as Donna and James are walking across, there are servicemen all sat at the bar, their heads turned one direction. Did you notice that?
I did, but I guess my question for you is, what do you make of it? I mean, obviously you noticed it, but what significance do you feel it has?
Well, it's not really until after Donna and James. They go ahead and they're trying to make a plan, and James says that Mrs. Marsh, she wouldn't do that to me. She said that they're setting me up, but she really cares about me. She's really... And Donna understands pretty much what happened between him and Mrs. Marsh. The sheriff's department comes into the bar because that was their lead. And he goes there, says, "Excuse me, gentlemen." And all of them turn their heads at once to look at him. It's like they're drones. I'm not exactly sure what this leads to, but we point out little things in the background, and that was just one of the oddest ones of this episode. But quickly, it seems like James and Donna get away from the bar, away from the sheriffs, and that's where we're left off there.
Yeah, to me, chess is the institution of nerd culture. It all begins with chess. I may have been developed, I think, in India, and it's spread out over the years. And so there's different schools of thought. And an old lifelong buddy of mine does a professional player at a certain level where he can make a little bit of money doing it, genius level kind of guy. And I always remember he told me that not only pawns are the soul of chess, which is an old famous quote, it's how you play the positions, there's strategy versus tactics, and then there's, of course, the most important thing, how do you play the end game? Because if you get up one pawn, you basically exchange everything, magnify that little advantage, and boom, there you go. And nobody kind of did that better, it seems like, than Capablanca, the person that's referenced here in this episode about it. And it's supposed to somehow allude to what's going on with everybody in here. And the whole thing with Wyndham Earl that's going to be coming up, of course, it gets ignored, and I'm just trying to say something about it because I always liked Capablanca's a major opponent, one of them anyway, Alexander Alekhine. That's the guy that always was an impression on me when I was a chess player. And the reason why I'm mentioning all this is because as much as everybody still hates chess, and even though a small group of people play it today, it's a game, and you're supposed to think pieces ahead, and you can predict this, what's a certain level of percentage of outcomes, and you can work on all this stuff. And we had the impression that Cooper really looked up to his mentor, Wyndham Earl, as somebody that could do this. And now he's supposed to be like the main bad guy, as it were. And my problem with this episode, even though you're talking about starting off with Bobby, is you and I know what was going on with Bobby and him getting set up,
James.
or James, sorry, excuse me, with James. Bobby, I'll talk about here in a moment. It's disappointing that anybody can see it coming from a mile ahead. And if it's done well, we don't care. But I think here in this opening scene, the whole thing with the bar and Donna coming to save him and help him out and all that, there's zero tension to it. There's nothing going on with it. Everything is going according to plan. We know that her quote unquote driver brother is really her lover, and he's a jerk, and something bad's going to happen, which it does. So I really felt let down at the beginning of this, and it's just a testament to what I'm going to call lazy writing as far as what's going on here, because it's not done well at all. The lover in here of Evelyn is not intimidating whatsoever. And the strength that we left the last episode on this one, it felt like it was a little bit of a dark, like the game's afoot, Watson, and something's happening, and here we've got James being chased by the cops, and what does James want to do? He wants to go back to talk to Evelyn, the lady he just banged a couple times. Are you serious, bro? This guy's shagging more stuff than Frank Sinatra, and yet he hasn't gotten one more brain cell of intelligence about what's going on with women. And it was disappointing because it seemed like his character had turned a bit in season 2, at least a little bit, and that's what's frustrating. This season, we've seen a dramatic change for sometimes no good reason at all at some of the characters. And while, yes, we expect a little level of goofiness and craziness, even for him, who had a somewhat interesting arc, it just doesn't work, and it makes a lot of the characters fall flat. So even though you get Donna talking to Ed on the phone and having to cover up, and it's supposed to feel like it's a little bit of a tension, it kind of falls flat, because the next scene is Bobby, and he's in at Rochelle, and he's talking to Truman and Cooper about what's going on. And finally, after a season's worth of episodes, you get Bobby saying, yeah, we're together, we're an item. He's back to being the jerk Bobby that we knew and loved, and kind of arrogant, confident. I don't know what you want to call it. He's just himself that we remember from the first few episodes in season 1. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just our disdain for Bobby, right? But or not Bobby
James.
per se, but James. But for Bobby, I never really hated him as much maybe as you did. Dislike's probably the right word. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of going in with this. It felt like Twin Peaks, like we're getting back to the meat and potatoes to it. And then we get what I think was an even great addition to the scene. It's really the end of it. It's kind of like a final one scene. I'll say Albert,
Yes.
who hasn't been around for a while, comes in, and he has this great line when Bobby's walking out. He's like, get a life, punk. It's tremendous. And it's like all of a sudden his emotional shield that he has up because he doesn't know how to talk with people comes down, and you get this bro moment between him and Cooper and everybody. And it's just nice to see it. And you get some stuff about what's going on. And you know, the old boss there of Cooper, Gordon Cole, played by Lynch himself in a few episodes. They get this big elaborate thing about these pieces of clothing, these articles that were found, in certain areas. And when you look at the map of the United States, it forms the letter C for Caroline, which of course means Wyndham Earle's wife, the one that Cooper himself decided to bone on the side and had the big sob story. And that's why he couldn't bone Audrey and whatever. At least they're consistent and have depth to this backstory. Okay. So I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. After the scene though, once it jumps to Leo and Wyndham Earle, to me, it rapidly goes downhill. So anything about this scene here with everybody before we move on to Wyndham?
Yeah, no, I really agree. When Albert comes in and he hugs Harry and he's like, "Hello," and you get this vibe that
It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like, that's what I
definitely
want.
different from before. Of course, the last time they saw each other, it was after pretty much solving the case of Laura Palmer. So I guess there's been some time since then, and it's just good to see him again. It's real. It was really nice.
I think there's timelines out there, and I want to say it's like maybe I'm going to guess a couple weeks. There's
a little the last line of this scene is something that I also love, and Albert's goes to Dale, and he says, "But a side note, your fashion, those dark muted earth tones, it's considered fashion suicide, but somehow, Dale, on you, it works."
Yeah.
That was just it was one of those scenes. He has the best lines sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's such a contrast from the way we got to know him as a guy that talked like this, like JC Dent from one of the early video games. I'm forgetting the name of it, but Deus Ex, actually. I mean, it's very robotic. And in here, he's like whatever, but it's still him. He has a genuine excitement. It was always best when we felt like they were up against a force of evil, something unknown, they had no idea what was going on. And even though that's missing in this episode, it still felt good. It was very warm to see.
Yep.
So go ahead.
This next scene, I do have to agree with you. It's when we were introduced to him last time, Wyndham Earle, while obviously he's off his rocker, but he seems somewhat put together, cold, calculating. Here he seems crazier. After he plays with his flute, he sets it aside and Leo's laying there, and Earle is just rambling on, and eventually Leo tries to get up and head out of there, and Wyndham Earle knocks him down and says, you can't do that. And he takes off this shock collar that he had on his own neck and puts it around Leo. And he said, I was saving this for a very special occasion, but now you made me use it. And we seem shocked. It's a really quick scene, but it's totally different from who we were introduced to yesterday. At least that's how it felt.
Growing up just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Pine Hills Palace, where we're currently broadcasting from, at least where I'm at, I know you're a bit of the ways off, but you're still in Central Florida nonetheless. We had, it's a very rough and tumble area, and always has been for a good 30, 40 years now. And so we always used to joke with some of the athletes running around that if you're a big dude, you didn't know how to fight. And the reason why is because people wouldn't mess with you. Why? Because you're a big guy. The appearance of being threatening and scary is, the fear of the unknown that exists in all of us, man, woman, child, whatever. And so when I talk about what made the very first season of Twin Peaks run so well was that we didn't know who killed Laura, and that there was a second one, and we knew it was tied to something else. And the beautiful part was that somehow we're going to have to come to the realization of what it was, but we had to get through a lot of characters, and we saw not necessarily shifting alliances, but we got to see a slightly different viewpoints on each character. But we kind of got the idea early on that Leo, he had that air, that threat about him that he's a stone cold killer and that he possibly could be it. Now, of course, since he's the first one, probably not the killer, but you don't know with these things, right? And so the whole idea of them not ever going to reveal Laura's killer made this so much better, because now, even though we talked about Leo, this whole season 2, he's been made a babbling mess. And they tried to play it up for yucks. They had a nice little horror scene an episode or 2 ago we talked about briefly, and he's escaped. He's fallen his way here into this cabin. And we've got this guy, Wyndham Earle, that's only been mentioned once or twice, mostly in season 2 here. Cooper's role model, if you will, professionally speaking, maybe even a father figure, it sounds like. And in here, instead of there being something intelligent where he gets very little screen time and he seems like he's smart, he seems like he's got an IQ of 90. He seems like he's as dumb as the gruel that he's making for Leo and feeding him with a stupid shot caller because he's wearing the stupid long johns. He's talking dumb. And immediately, any thought you had about what threat level this guy that could outsmart everybody, including the FBI, how there's no traces of everything, how there's this big elaborate chess thing going on, whether you're a nerd or not and care for it. The fact that, your take on that, sir?
I'm sorry.
Did I blank out there? We've got some lightning going on over here. What was the last thing you heard?
We were still talking about Wyndham Earl. Did you go on to Ed and Norma?
Yeah, I just briefly mentioned Ed and Norma, saying that one thing that made it kind of a weak scene to me is the fact that we knew this was going to happen over this basically season here. And it's almost like it's an open relationship because she's like, well, it's okay. I know about you guys, but I'm seeing Mike Nelson. And, she's been great in that role. And I just said that before, the interesting angle, which would have been different and a challenge would have been for her to actually go ahead and sleep with Mike Nelson. And basically when she says, I'll take you. And Mike goes, okay, when, or she breaks his cherry if he was a virgin, let's say, or something. That would have been a fun thing to kind of watch and realistic. And then here they're laying in bed and Norma even sits in bed with them. They pass the trophy around in a really rehearsed looking scene that looks awful. And yeah, it's adding to my frustration of this episode.
Well, see, I'm not exactly on board with that train of thinking, mostly because no offense to the actress, I just don't find her attractive. Not in the slightest. You
mean Nadine?
Yeah, Nadine is not attractive to me. And I'm not sure about Mike, but his type before was Donna. You don't go from Donna to Nadine.
Yeah.
And so that it could have been interesting, yeah, seeing him go along with it, but I just, even with Nadine being who she is, I don't see that happening. As for the scene, I mean, I was laughing because it's really just humorous. Her going in, sitting in bed, you expect something after she's bust down this door. But no.
Oh yeah, she walks through and the door just comes off in her hand. I didn't even mention that either. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: Norma's attractive. We know that.
Yeah.
Nadine, what if they had tried sexing her up just at least a little bit, because she was very cold and covered up a lot in the first few episodes. But what if we got to see how slim she was and attractive. And I don't mean turning her into a complete sex pot, but they could have done something in here to up the tension level between it. Because you look at Norma, you look at Nadine, and you go, well, Norma's got it in the face, just the way the actresses are presented. That's not a knock on either one of them. Nadine's body's been hidden, but she's not like a cow or anything like that, so she's not ugly, she's not unattractive.
It could have been done that way, but I'm not sure, because most of the times it's the looks that Nadine gives that's like, oh no.
Yeah,
that's just me. Like I said, no offense to the actress, but it's time to speak about a lady that you have trouble with. But I, of course, like most people, even you, would find lovely. We transition from the trees to a hand, and it's Josie's hand.
there are good transition scenes in this episode, I'll give you that.
Yeah, they're really interesting. It's not exactly the same, but it's with Dale and Coop, and they're going over the death of Mr. Lee. He was killed a few states off, and Dale is going to give them a moment alone, and he says, I'm going to go for coffee. And who does he see but Pete coming in with dry cleaning? I automatically assumed it was Catherine's, but no, Pete says he was feeling bad for what Catherine has put Josie through. So he agreed to go pick up the clothes. And he hears a call in the other room, and he's like, oh, let me get that, and hands all of the clothes to Dale.
Waka wappa wappa.
Yeah, but this gives Dale an opportunity to take a hair that he's found on one of the outfits and pulls them and the gloves. The call, we learn, is for Josie. Josie comes over, picks it up, and we hear who it is. We see who it is. Thomas Eckhart. And we also see that Catherine is listening in.
Ooh, yeah. Pete coming through with the clothes, that's like the whole fish in the percolator thing from season 1.
Yes.
Oh, good. But here's what's weird about this episode. When they go to talk, they go through like the pantry, which has this like giant set of double doors. And so they're standing there for a brief moment having this conversation. And I guess it's supposed to be an artful shot where you just see like the head in each of the square windows that you can see through at the top level of the door, at head level. And they're talking. I'm looking at this going, this is not artistic. This is stupid. This is someone saying, okay, what would be cool? I'm going to have them stand like this and talk or whatever. I'm looking at that going, oh, that's just awful. And then I thought, well, what the hell possessed Cooper to want to take a sample off of it? It felt like it came out of nowhere to me. And I don't have a problem with it because of the reveal a little bit later of what happens with it. But in the moment, I'm watching it going, okay, Cooper's been a little not on his A game ever since he's been basically kicked off of the FBI, which I'm not even sure if he's kicked off or if he's just under suspension. But then I go, well, he's got to be kicked off if he's going to be hired by Twin Peaks just to be Cooper's, right-hand man, even though it's supposed to be Deputy Dumbass or really, Hawk or whatever, and we haven't seen them in a while. But yeah, this scene, Piper Laurie, like I said, was so good, and now it's regulated to nonsense. Even David Warner as Mr. Eckhart's. You know what? I can say this positive about the scene. It's better than the next one because we get the ultimate worst bit of this nonsense of Ben Horn, and I railed against it. If anybody's listening for the first time, or relatively, and you haven't gone back and listened, you think I would hate the show, and I don't. It's just that there's some really abrupt changes in here, and at least Dr. Jacoby's showing up with that cool red and blue, eyeglass thing that he does and all that. But you've got Benjamin Horn thinking he's, a Confederate guy. I think General Lee. You've got, I guess, Laura tutored the Indian guy that we forgot from the first episode too. I think Audrey's brother or something in there rocking back and forth. They got drums. I'm simply going to skip the scene because it's a waste of time. This is a go make yourself some coffee. It's got Audrey basically saying to Jerry, Ben's brother, that, hey, look, I'm in charge here. If you want to leave him as is, I get the estate, but I want him to be brought back. Dr. Jacoby, do it. And all of a sudden, Jerry, who's smart, realizes yeah, he's in a really tough state. Let's see what we can do. So I like how she's taking charge. She's doing something.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most everybody, nothing is doing anything. Things are happening and they're just sort of there. And that's what I mean by there's a big difference between, no matter what character we're talking about here, when somebody's doing something, you feel it going somewhere, whether you agree with it or not. You can at least understand it. At least she still seems involved in doing something, but they've even changed her character. So I don't know. How did you feel about it? I hate it.
I didn't hate it. I really enjoyed actually Audrey talking to Jerry, saying, "Listen, if you want an opportunity to do anything in the future, you want my dad back." That alone made the scene worth it.
So she had some balls. She is her father's daughter.
It feels kind of better than the next scene, which is depressed Mrs. Marsh. Oh, at the bar again. Donna steps up, reintroduces herself like she has to. And Donna wants to know, why are you doing this to James? And Mrs. Marsh just tries to shrug it off. Oh, life will screw you over, sweetie. You better realize it. And that's when her brother, quote unquote, Malcolm comes in.
Yeah.
And pulls Mrs. Marsh aside and then says to Donna that if I ever see you around here again, I'm going to kill you. Because she's obviously with James. And I don't feel like we have to address this scene. The most interesting thing is the transition into the next scene. Because it's a tree and then it warps and it shows a single piece a night before we get to the sheriff's station.
No, and how many times did you have to watch that until you saw it, or did you notice it right off the bat? Because that's some of the things people may not notice about the show. Because there's a lot of owls in here too. Yep.
It was right off the bat.
The Black Knight. And if you're chess aficionados out there, let me just throw this old chess phrase on there. Little cues that help the beginner player recognize some important concepts. And that is this, especially since we're talking about knights. It's one of my personal favorites that would get me beat up in the chess community. And that's this. A knight on the rim is grim. Anyway, no, the only thing I'll say about this scene, and then you can take the next one, is that this guy's reminds me of the Max Headroom show from the 80s, that dude. And I think that guy showed up in something later on, maybe Z Nation or whatever, some zombie show, I think. He's not intimidating, all threatening to kill her, but whatever. It's what we thought it was going to be. I agree with you. Nothing notable in there at all. So the next scene is probably one of the best, I think, but go ahead and take it.
Yeah, no, it's with Albert and Dale in the sheriff's station, and they ran the DNA that Coop got from Josie's clothes, and it becomes pretty clear that Josie is the one who's most likely responsible for the death of Mr. Lee. And even though it's a lot to go on, Dale's saying that it's still not 100%. So until then, we need to keep it hushed before we tell Harry. And Albert has another great line. He says, your friend, our friend here, has some really real girlfriend trouble.
Yeah, this felt like a well-rehearsed scene. It had a good flow to it. It's one of those things where, like I say, sometimes if things kind of declines a little bit, you don't notice the drop off. But when there's one or two bad scenes, maybe you can forgive them. But in this case, there's such a stark contrast to some of the other scenes that I went, wow, this again, like we say, when they're doing something, when they're investigating stuff, really feels like it's going somewhere. We don't really care what it is. We just like them together, having to get something accomplished, problem solving, and we feel that bromance between the 2-3 of them whenever they're together, or 4 or 5. If we talk about some of the extended characters, but the big reveal is that this murder victim, kind of, his name's Eric, but Cooper's talking to Harry about how Wyndham Earl and his using chess, because it was mentioned before in a few episodes about how they played a game of chess every day for like 2 or 3 years, and how Cooper never won a game because Earl's so good. Well, Cooper just means you never got any better and you sucked. I mean, really. And with Earl's extended opening scene, I go, oh God, this guy does not give you the sense of he really is smart, dedicated, serious chess guy. The problem with this scene is that they want to get a local expert at chess, which they just happen to have there in the town of Twin Peaks, which I'm like, oh boy. And so I'm kind of mad thinking about it. But the next scene kind of expands on that when they're at the diner. And you see Cooper, you see the doctor, and you see that trucker dude, I think, that we've seen in an episode or two. He was mistaken for somebody else. They got chess up. And if you're in hardcore chess circles, you'll see people play speed chess. You'll see people walking and playing games of it. You'll see it with people occasionally. It's kind of cool and neat. But who's the one that checkmate, checkmate, checkmate? It's Fishboy Pete. And the problem I have with it is it takes away from the quote-unquote serious nature of this chess thing with the Wyndham Earl, whether you're buying it or not. And as goofy as he was early in this episode, we said that really felt like him. You would have thought that if they knew they were going to do this, which I don't think they did, that's why it's lazy writing, you could have had a scene of him playing chess by himself while Catherine's bitching at him or something. Or you just see a chessboard in the background. Something a few episodes earlier to kind of subconsciously plan it so it doesn't look like this is just, let me throw this out of my ass and try to make it work, because it's completely stupid. Now, we like Pete. He's not really a main character, but he's notable. He's the one that fell in Laura's body in episode 1, and here he ends up kind of like being recruited to like help him out because, Cooper says, well, hey, we got a very serious game here. We can afford not to lose a piece at all, because the idea is that whenever a piece comes off the board, Wyndham Earl's killed somebody. And as cool in the nerdy sort of way this could have been, it's lacking any serious punch or adult sort of grim nature to it that we wouldn't understand. If they had milked this out where we didn't see Wyndham Earl a lot and we just saw some sort of like that, it could have been done a lot better. But it just feels dorky, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it feels juvenile. There's no sense of that serious, scary, or even supernatural part that we've flirted with off and on for 15 episodes plus season 1 in here too. So that's my take on it. What did you get out of this scene?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of think that Pete having a little bit of a smarts in one kind of area makes some sort of sense. Obviously, he's not involved in the bogus chess game that Catherine is running with Eckart and her brother or whatever. But the idea that he's able to control the board, it's nice. And it gives them a little more to do, which I do appreciate. You're right. They could have thrown in hints somewhere, but I don't know. It was enough. What I really do like, though, is the transition. It's the absolutely unnecessary transition.
Sometimes those are good.
It's the
Non sequiturs,
same
yeah.
place. But they go from the board in the diner, and they closing up on it, and they transition to the tile of the diner where we see Shelley walking in. She goes to Norma. The music is swelling up, as she's asking for her job back. And Norma's saying, oh, it hasn't been the same without her. She's happy to have her back. But then quickly, Harry comes over and says that he needs to talk to Norma. They go in the back, and he tells her that Hank's almost healed up. And she says, I don't want him back. I don't want him back here ever. And Harry assures her, there's no way he's coming back. Everything he's already been done and accused for, he's definitely not coming back. So you don't have to worry about that. And it's really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish it lasted longer though, because it would have had us avoiding this next scene.
Well, you want to avoid it, but I want to throw you right in it. Take it.
Through the woods, the moon in the sky, Eckert comes over. Josie opens the door and she's shocked. But Catherine's apparently invited her. And so she's saying, oh, come right on in. And she quickly tells Josie to pour them some drinks. And it doesn't take long before she's asking questions. So is this why you killed my brother? And he shrugs it off. He doesn't even deny it. And quickly they transition to talking about Josie. And he's talking about how, oh, look at what lovely hands she has, and how he'd want her back. And Catherine is hinting that, oh, she could absolutely give her back to Eckert for the right bargain, of course. And he says that he's absolutely going to try to match her price before the main course, which is apparently a hog's head.
Hog's head? Or, yeah, a pig. Yeah. It is. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. I'm like, what is that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not. Like I said, it's a bogus chess game. I don't like them at all. Especially right here in this scene. I don't care about any of this. All you see is Josie being there like, oh no, they're going to sell me. That's not legal, guys. But it's just hard to get through, really. This is why I have such a torn relationship with this episode, because I do like parts of it. This is one of the parts that I absolutely I don't like.
Yeah, the whole thing is Piper Laurier's Catherine Martell does such a great job, especially when she was matching with Ben, which is why he's such a letdown in this fugue state, if you want to call it that, to use a term we talked about before, but just goofy stuff. And I think it really chomps the characters out at the knees, so it's really hard to be in it. And so Josie, being the woman you can't trust, sex pot, had a really bad past. We understand she got involved in some bad stuff, but if you cut everything about Josie Packard out in Twin Peaks, at least from right now what we've covered off the top of my head, I would say it means nothing to advance the storyline of who killed Laura Palmer or anything else. And Twin Peaks was not meant to just be that. It was originally, let's say, then ABC screwed up, and that's why this particular episode is one of the lowest rated ones, because it's, again, rudderless. We thought it was starting to go somewhere. It's starting to go somewhere because we're getting Thomas Eckert coming here. He's talking about what's going on. You're supposed to see the pain in Josie's face because it reminds her of bad things that had happened and maybe to come in the future and all that, even though she's now subservient to Catherine Martell. But like you said, and I've mentioned it before, we don't care. Now, if she were pregnant with Sheriff's baby and we knew that as watchers, but nobody else did, that might be interesting, because it might go, okay, how the hell is she going to get out of this, and how is she going to involve Truman, right? But they don't do that. So you're not giving them really any meat to work with here. And like I say, David Warner comes in. He has a little bit of a heavy presence or whatever, but it doesn't lift the scene at all. It's just, it's extra, it's filler. It's like you said, we don't care. So the sooner the less time they're on screen, the better, unless they're giving something to do. And then this show's done a fairly good job of bringing people back, and like Albert in this particular episode, or even Mike Nelson that we didn't see because he's a big side character, but now he's got a new function. He's there to be chased by, Ed's wife, and it's like, well, what's going to happen? Does she get him or not? Because we haven't seen it really develop anything. So it can be done, but you got to be committed. And with switching writers a little bit here and there, and even directors, the visual flow gets off a little bit. And I agree that scene is just, it's whatever. But it may be just as bad as the next scene, which is you get this beautiful woman who's still in mourning, maybe blowing smoke rings out her mouth, which is supposed to be erotic and sexy. And it's like, okay,
he's falling apart.
Huh?
I don't mean to interrupt. She's absolutely falling apart. You can see it weighing on her face in this scene. I have to say that towards this actress, at least.
I won't disagree with what you think you're seeing, but the question is, why are we seeing it? Did she really let him go intentionally because she cared for him, because she didn't want him to get caught? Come on. No 18-year-old bull is going to make a mid-20s woman, shudder so much that, she's going to fall in love like that. It's just not how it goes. It's just totally unbelievable here. But it's James. He's showing up and he wants to talk to Evelyn, and he plays that hurt little boy thing like, bro, you got paid to do a job and you boned the boss, and the money you earned, I'm sure it's tax-free. It's off the books. What are you complaining about? Go home with the woman that currently wants to bone you on your motorbike. You're good. And of course, he might be wanted for murder, and we don't know what's going on too. And he throws her down, and she looks despondent. Looks like they might have, I hate you. I don't know if I hate you sex, but I'm going to have sex and then get mad at you before I kill you, sort of thing. And of course, that's when Max Headroom wannabe dipshit lover comes in, and we know that how something's going to happen here. And of course, instead of letting this play out, where there might be some tension, even though we think we know what's going to happen, they cut away to Ben Horne, I guess, getting what we would call in today's terms an intervention. And you get to see Audrey in like this Southern outfit with like a hat and, kind of thing. She looks really cute in it, actually, kind of nice. But it's dumb, it's stupid. They have everybody doing stuff. They have the Confederate flag out. Everybody's dressed up. It's like, what the F is going on? What the heck? This is not the same show that we grew up really loving and watching. The only saving grace to the scene, though, is despite the set piece it was going through everything, it appears that when Ben falls down, he kind of stirs and he's like, where am I? What happened? I'm back to myself again.
I knew you'd hate this scene. I actually thought you would hate this part too, because he has a Wizard of Oz moment. I had this wondrous dream, and you were there, and you were there.
All I'm going to say about the Wizard of Oz, it's a very disturbing movie. It's not fun and games. The whole Dorothy thing and her, she was one of the first passed around actresses way back in the day, and there's a lot of disturbing stuff about it. So I really don't want to get to the disgusting dark nature. Right now, the Wizard of Oz, if we did a deep dive into it, would be a lot darker than what Twin Peaks is, and that's not right. It's borderline unholy. But yeah, I did notice it, and you're right. It's very Wizard of Oz-ish. Oh, I've had a dream. I'm out of it now. Wait, what if it's real? It's really stupid. Okay, it's weak writing.
And then, just for the kicker, he mentions how, wait, why are you all dressed up?
Stupid.
He doesn't seem to understand why they're all laughing all of a sudden.
Well, if I got pissed at that scene, here's the thing. I at least knew it was crap, and I've been kind of tortured watching it, so I'm kind of numb to it because, you can yell at like your dog for so long and kick your dog, but at some point your dog's going to get used to it and just react to it. And I love my dogs. I don't ever treat them that way, but it's just the analogy in it. But it gets worse because the next scene, as we're getting close to finishing up here, is even worse. It's Wyndham Earl, and he's got Leo kind of like trying to write something, and he's got the shot collar, and he's trying to like make Leo decide which one should get killed next and stuff. And he's got the picture of the three girls, and it's a quick scene, and it's like they chopped all the stuff and spread it out, which I get it, but sometimes you need to go extended to make that the emphasis of the episode, because some of the other side B level, C level, D level stuff is going to be crap. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to have to, I'm going to take the intern of this because I disagree wholeheartedly. This scene, Wyndham Earl was saying that he was going to help Leo, and he's teaching Leo to write again. And Leo eventually, he takes Leo's hand after shocking him and shows him, and that's when Leo can say Wyndham. He's actually tried to teach him again.
But he like feeds him like a cookie and is standing behind him wearing a fake mustache and mutton chops and kind of
one he puts on, yes, and that's very important.
Looking.
Here's why it's important though. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next scene, which I actually do enjoy. We see Donna, and she sees through the window of the Marsh estate James on the floor as Malcolm is trying to convince Evelyn to shoot James. Donna runs in, goes to James on the floor. No, don't do it. And yeah, that's kind of stupid. But the best part is when Mrs. Marsh is backing up and Malcolm saying, give me the gun. Give me the gun. And he's approaching her. That's when she shoots him. And the story Malcolm made up earlier, he was angry. He killed her, Mr. Marsh, and wanted to kill her too. She's repeating it, and she's going to use it against Malcolm, and that's great. And the best part of this episode right here is this ending. We get finally a waterfall transition as we go to the lodge, which I missed. Yes, I did. And Dale is whistling as he's heading to the elevator. And he sees a picture of Caroline in his wallet. And who do we see but Wyndham Earl walking right by him from the elevator, wearing the mutton chops and mustache, full disguise, as he goes to the front desk and asks for Audrey Horne. And he notices pictures of owls on postcards on the spinner rack. And he makes a note of it, picks one up. And that's when we follow Dale again as he's going to his room. He doesn't call Diane or anything. Or sorry, not Diane. No, it is Diane. He takes off his shoes and closes the door. And that's when he sees right there on the bed this white mask with glowing eyes. He very carefully picks it up, and who do we hear but Wyndham Earl's voice playing on the tape, saying how they both, even though what happened, they both love Caroline. And now it's Dale's move.
Weak sauce. We're gonna agree to disagree here. So we'll just back up a moment here. As we're finishing up the last couple scenes, we're talking about what you said, which I think was very obvious about Evelyn and her lover Malcolm, and getting shot by her accidentally and all that.
Accidentally, but yeah,
whatever the reason is, accidentally, intentionally, who cares? Now we're supposed to root for Evelyn when she's been the femme fatale in here. No, she's supposed to be the problem one. She's supposed to be the conniver. She's supposed to be the one that gets involved in everything. She's supposed to be the one that makes things happen, not the good, not the bad, but just the instigator. And now we're supposed to act like Malcolm was. No, it doesn't make sense at all. It's, again, extremely, extremely weak writing there too. Doesn't do anything. It'd have been interesting if Malcolm, when he was trying to intimidate Donna earlier, if he might have made a comment or two that got Donna thinking, and then when he got shot, maybe Donna's got something against Evelyn now, and maybe Evelyn is acting like she was really hurt. I don't know. This is just B-level stuff, and it's just because it's fresh in our mind, and because at least somebody's getting boned. That's the only reason why it's better than whole Josie Catherine Martell stuff. Seriously. I mean, it's dumb. It gave James something to do for most of the season. Okay, fine. I mean, James still seems like James, and he's getting enough screen time. I get it, but it's been awful.
It was less rooting for her, more watching him die that made it good for me.
But again, even if you want somebody to die, it should be a payoff, and you understand why you're getting it. Malcolm, like I say, was not intimidating. You go, well, yeah, Evelyn's boning, James. So you look at Malcolm and go, Malcolm's no James. If Malcolm was a good-looking older gentleman or whatever, because he wasn't that old, you might see some little triangle kind of stuff going on there, but Malcolm seems like a little child. I mean, he's nothing. You go, why the hell is Evelyn even with her? This femme fatale. Stupid. It makes no sense at all. It just, hopefully we don't have to talk about them anymore. But I suspect we will, with only 5 episodes to go, or 4 or 5, or whatever it is for the season. Hopefully things will change soon. But you're right. The last episode or scene of this episode should be interesting. It's not, because again, how dumb Wyndham Earls looked this entire time. And while it might be that kind of, Cooper got distracted at a photo of Caroline, which now all of a sudden we see that he's in love with, even though we've had really only a few things to it. You'd think he'd be over her after a year. Okay, maybe he's not. But the whole walking past them sort of thing, I'm like, yeah, I don't care. It doesn't have that same level of being scared like when he got shot at the end of season 1, which hopefully we'll get some conclusion to, because as I said to you several episodes ago, hey, that's something that seems pretty obvious that we're forgetting, and now it looks like they're at least attempting to address it. Maybe it's Josie. We'll find out. But yeah, just to kind of sum things up, agreed with you, for a bit of a frustrating episode because there's a lot of dumb stuff in it. I didn't care for it as much as the last episode. Hopefully they'll turn things around, and maybe with some things looking like they're ending, we can transition to some meat and potatoes A-level stuff and finish off this season strong. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I mean, we're going to have to disagree about that ending. I liked how we was listening. It was really an odd shot about the mask pulling up and us seeing through the dark side of the mask, Cooper's eyes coming up. But no, I just disagree. I actually like this ending more than you. And that's all there is to it.
Okay, yeah, that works. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens next week here on Extreme TV, and we're going to cover, again, Season 2 of Twin Peaks, Episode 16, as we're getting close to the end of Season 2, before taking a break and doing Fire Walk with me, and then launching right into Season 3 and checking it out. So check us out here on the Extreme Movie Show. We've got all of Season 1, all of Season 2 here. We have some other TV shows on there as well. We have some topical reviews of other TV shows, but mostly movies, if you check that out. Again, I'm Rob, your host here. I'm here with Professor Pixel. Pixel, thanks to you for showing up again. And as always, guys, stay extreme. Good night.
So long.